Welcome to the Nonprofit Voice, which is brought to you by NonProfit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. For our Nonprofit Voice text series, join Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners and editorial advisory board member for NonProfit Pro. In each episode, he will welcome nonprofit executives and technology partners to discuss the latest nonprofit tools to help your organization navigate the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Mark Becker here, the founding partner of Cathexis Partners. It's great to be talking nonprofit technology again and having Mitch back again, and this time in a new role, talking about DAFs. I think it's going to be a great conversation, obviously getting a lot of traction these days, talking about and receiving DAF gifts. So, Mitch, you want to reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, it's great to be back on the pod, and thanks for having me, Mark, and our friends from the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Really excited for this conversation. My name is Mitch Stein. I'm the head of strategy here at Chariot. We provide donor-advised fundraising solutions for nonprofit organizations so they can get more dollars and donors from DAFs. And I know we'll go into more detail later in the conversation, but I'll hand it over to Sarah and Shirley to introduce themselves next.
Perfect. Thanks, Mitch. And thank you, Mark, for having us. I'm Sarah Traisman. I'm the Director of Fundraising Operations at the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I've been with the foundation since 2019, and my team's focus is built upon the idea that a strong fundraising operations team drives revenue growth by reducing the time relationship managers spend on various administrative tasks. We design and implement programs and processes that improve time spent with the donors and effectiveness of their interactions. Part of the work my team does is around vendor technologies and how they can support the stewardship process. But in addition to my work at the foundation, I'm also the daughter of a Parkinson's patient, and I can confidently say that I'm consistently proud of the work Michael J. Fox Foundation is doing for the patients and families like mine.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Mark, for having us. My name is Shirley, and I'm the Director of Planned Giving at the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I've been with the foundation since 2016 and in the world of planned giving for over 12 years. My team and I work closely with advisors, donors, and family members of estates to ensure that they have the right resources to maximize their future and current gifts through specialized giving vehicles.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on today, both of you, all of you, and look forward to having the conversation. So, Shirley, I think everybody is pretty familiar with Michael J. Fox and the Michael J. Fox Foundation, but what's going on? What's the latest buzz over there? What's really your latest achievements? What's keeping you busy, you and the team busy, and what's your focus for 2024?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with, Michael J. Fox Foundation was founded in 2000 with one single urgent goal, and that was to find a cure for Parkinson's and go out of business. For those on the call that are not familiar, Parkinson's is the second most common degenerative brain disease after Alzheimer's. There's about 6 million people worldwide living with Parkinson's, and we expect that number to double by 2040. We are the largest nonprofit funder of Parkinson's research. So to date, we funded more than $2 billion in research programs worldwide. And since 2000, science really come a long way. It's a really exciting time to be part of the organization. There are over 200 therapeutics in trials, and we've seen over 17 therapies come to market in the last 8 years. But last spring, we crossed a major milestone where researchers finally identified the first biomarker for Parkinson's disease. And that's going to help us better diagnose, treat, and prevent Parkinson's. So we are very excited about this new chapter.
That's awesome. That's great to see the mission really meeting some goals, right, and making some advancements. That makes it all, even in those tough days, it makes it all easier to you get wrapped up in your day to day, right? To be able to say things like that. Well done.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Mitch, the industry is kind of definitely, I'm hearing a lot of buzz around DAFs and making the most out of all of that. Where is this all coming from from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I know Shirley and Sarah have seen this firsthand, the increase in growth in this market, so they can speak to that as well. But I'll start off with a super simple example of what a donor advised fund is, just in case you have any listeners that aren't as familiar. And then I'll just review some of the recent dynamics. But a donor advised fund is just like a savings account specifically for charity with tax advantages. So a lot of people compare it to a 401k or an HSA. You have that for retirement, for your healthcare spending, and people can use a donor advised fund to set aside money for charitable giving and get that tax write-off up front, invest those dollars while they're in the fund, and then grant them out over time. So it's very popular with donors for a few reasons. With a certain audience, if you have appreciated assets like stock or ownership in a business, you can donate that to your donor advised fund and avoid any capital gains on those assets and also get the full tax write-off up front, and they grow tax-free in the vehicle. So it's a really smart tax planning strategy for people. And I think that's where it initially gained popularity. But in the past 5 years, we've seen the number of people with donor advised funds more than double. We now have over 3 million people nationally using them. There's $230 billion in donor advised funds. Just last year, there was over $52 billion granted to nonprofits like the Michael J. Fox Foundation out of these vehicles. So that growth is over 20% per year of how much they're funding nonprofits. And just last year, more money went into DAFs than foundations. So that's a lot of numbers I just rattled off, but hopefully leave that impression that this is a rapidly changing dynamic in philanthropy. And it's because more and more people are using these funds because they're useful for accountable philanthropy. Like, I am certainly not an ultra high net worth individual, but I put $100 a month into a DAF to keep myself accountable to that giving goal. And I also get a match from my employer every month of another $100. So that's just sitting there and growing for every time I'm inspired to give. And it's a really powerful tool to increase overall giving and increase accountability for people who want to be philanthropic.
Nice, nice. So awesome. Sounds easy, right? So Sarah, what's the biggest challenges when it comes to DAF gifts and stewarding those donors?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so that's great, right? We've got these DAFs and we've got more and more people taking advantage of DAFs, but then the challenges that we're seeing is that on the foundation side, the lack of the data around the DAF gifts from the donors. So for years, we're seeing major gifts come through DAF vehicles, but we're unable to identify who the donor is beyond the information that's provided by the financial institution, which sometimes is pretty limited. So we were really eager to make connections with those donors. And I mean, they have a vested interest. They're giving to the foundation, but we don't have the information back, the data back to reach out to them, to connect. They likely have a vested interest in the foundation, in Parkinson's research, but we just didn't have the data to steward the donors. So from that perspective, these large gifts really felt like misconnections. And it was not always abundantly clear if that was by design or by way of how we received the gift because of that lack of data.
That kind of reminds me, as you're talking through that, of Facebook fundraising donations.
Yes.
Obviously, DAFs are much larger, which is great, but still this kind of unknown, wait, where is this from? Who is this?
Right.
And how do we contact them, right?
Right. It's, the gift is there, the intent is there, but not being able to connect and continue and deepen that relationship was really lacking.
And one thing I'd add, Mark, just some data that we have from a few different studies show that less than 4% of DAF donors are intending to give anonymously. So I think you hear a lot of people describe what Sarah's explaining as an anonymity, but in fact, it's not useful information. So you'll get like the name of their fund account or a mailing address, but not actionable information. And so it's not that the donor necessarily wants to be anonymous. And that's the big problem that we saw from the charity perspective is like, and how it used to be is I get to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, I'm inspired to give. I already have this account where I put all my money in I want to donate with, and there's no action for me to take. I need to go log back into my bank account, go through several extra steps and hurdles, and then they don't even end up getting my information. So I'm not going to hear from them, or at least not for weeks or months. This is a really like broken feedback loop for something that's specifically designed for charitable giving.
Right, right. Interesting. Okay, got it. So Shirley, how does the conversation around DAFs evolve in your role specifically, but also at Michael J. Fox overall, based on all of this?
Yeah, so we are seeing a shift in philanthropy with the increase in DApps. There's so many white papers about this also, and everything that Mitch said. Some of the numbers that really stick with me is there's over $300 billion held in DApps, and grants from DApps are reaching a new high, and 89% of wealth is being held in non-cash assets. So as a fundraiser, that means that we have to be strategic in how we ask donors to give, not just when to give. There's so much opportunity because of this giving vehicle. Specifically for planned giving with my team, if we know a donor has a donor advised fund, we remind them that they have to proactively name a beneficiary and that charities like ours can be named.
Gotcha. So Mitch, gotta be, all this money's out there and sitting in DAFs. How much? And it's got to be frustrating for the nonprofits, right?
Yeah, I mean, the data unfortunately lags a few years, but it's been on the rise. And the latest we have from 2022 is that there was $230 billion sitting in donor advised funds, but also in 2023, the market was up over 20%. And that tends to be the biggest indicator of growth in DAF balances because they're invested in the market. So I would suspect that is closer to a $300 billion number. We'll see in a few months when the data comes out. But huge opportunity for nonprofits, and those problems we talked about earlier around difficulty for the donor to make those gifts, difficulty to steward them, and to track and process those gifts on the back end. This is all what resulted in Chariot's discovery of the ability to create a payment option to use a donor advised fund directly in a nonprofit's website or donation form, just like they would a Venmo, a PayPal, a credit card, all these other payment options we're used to. There was a big gap in this vehicle that's the fastest growing thing in philanthropy, that's dedicated specifically for charitable giving, that there wasn't a way to use it digitally where you're most inspired to give. And so that's what we built and have been implementing now with over 6,000 nonprofits, and making sure that donors are reminded about their DAF, have a super easy way to use it and give it right in that inspiration moment, and that you collect their name and email upfront to avoid all those headaches that Sarah was talking about.
You're really shifting the idea of the market of who's giving from the DAF. And in a world where we're so used to paying with a Venmo or being able to quickly access that, donation or that gift, I mean, being able to provide that back to a growing market and audience is critical.
So yeah, I think it kind of answers itself, or you kind of self-answering, but Shirley, kind of share how you heard about or what made you decide to go with Chariot for processing DAFs. What made you decide to start using their product?
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of said it in each of their answers, but it's enabling charities like ours to make it easier for donors to give in this way. It's eliminating that guessing game of having to find out who the donor is and how we can thank them. But what's most important is it's allowing us to steward donors earlier than we would have previously. And that's really relevant in planned giving, which is so much about future gifts. But Chariot has allowed us to understand a new subset of donors and build a pipeline of prospects for the program.
And Sarah, I was reading the case study before our conversation. Those are some big numbers.
Yes.
Tell us about what you've achieved so far. I'd love to hear what you're seeing so far.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, I wrote down some of the numbers just because I felt like they're impactful. So by the numbers, we've seen a 69% of donors using DAF Pay by Chariot were first-time donors to the organization. So what that means is they weren't traditional DAF donors. They weren't ones that we were already expecting or in our pipeline. They were brand new, organic, stumbled upon the DAF Pay option within our website, which is really cool to see. 70% of the users that clicked on the DAF Pay did convert and complete their gift. So they let us know they had an intention and then they followed through and did complete that gift. And then we're seeing an average gift size of $1,800 which is amazing. And then over 50% of the new DAF donors responded to personal thank you emails. So going back to my original challenges of being able to connect the dots, being able to have that information to reach out and steward and connect, create a relationship with a donor, 50% of those folks responded, and that's developing a relationship and being able to provide more information back to the donors, which is incredible. But I also just wanted to share, those are numbers and those are really impactful and incredible. But Shirley and I have also found that the visibility and the access of the information is a much more interactive process. We receive a notice every time that a donor has initiated a DAF donation via Chariot, which really allows our team to proactively reach out, thank, connect. Maybe the donor wants more information. Maybe they want to be connected immediately while their donation is processing. It really allows for that interactive, immediate response and connection with the donor.
So yeah, higher numbers, new first-time donors, bigger gifts, and better information. That's a lot of check boxes. So Mitch, how does their numbers compare to what you're seeing across other organizations in the industry?
Yeah, I think the benefits that they're finding is consistent with organizations, particularly when they're seeing more volume overall. I think something that we spend a lot of time on is interviewing DAF donors because they're the primary user of our tools that we build. So we've had hundreds of those conversations, and every single one of them says they also make credit card gifts every year. And so it's interesting because most people have this image of a DAF donor in their mind as like a much older person who just like calls their financial advisor to make DAF gifts, but they wouldn't give online digitally or use your forms. And it's just not true. Like these people do engage digitally, make gifts online, and they're using their credit card. And we ask why, and the answer is always 100% of the time, oh, it's just so much easier. And so when you put yourself in Shirley and Sarah's position, there's someone who could have $100,000 in their donor advised fund that made a $100 gift on their credit card because it was just easier. And they wanted to support, they were inspired to give, but they didn't want to take a bunch of extra time. And maybe they're new to the organization, so they don't view that as worthy of going into their DAF account and initiating these grant requests and going through all that process. But when they can do it easily, it's like, oh, wait, I can use my DAF and I already have a lot of money set aside. And Chariot's modal and the payment option reminds them of how much money they have set aside, which drives these larger gift sizes that you're hearing. I mean, $1,800 for a digital gift average. The average online credit card gift is about $200. So it's a really significant difference. Yes, in that first time gift, but also to Shirley's point, then knowing that that's a high potential donor that you want to build a relationship with.
I love this story. I love stories like this about technology and helping out nonprofits. And this just, makes it real. It's a simple solution. It's elegant. It makes it easier for the donor to donate, and it makes it easier for the nonprofit to thank them. It just works. It's very elegant and well done. When I first heard about it, I don't know, so ago, definitely was impressed, and great to see you making so much traction in the industry. So Shirley, any predictions on where digital DAF giving is going, and any recommendations for nonprofits that are in your shoes?
Yeah, I think it will inspire generational giving. It will lead to philanthropic traditions among existing donors, but it'll also bring new people to the fold, like we're seeing, provided because Chariot is providing them with a wider array of methods to participate in philanthropy. Those ways of giving will become easier because of companies like Chariot providing digital disruption, replacing the analog methods that may have hindered giving this way in the past. And for recommendations for nonprofits, I would say education will be critical, both inside the organization and outside to your constituents. So making sure your constituents know that this is a way to give, and educating internally your staff about what DAFs are.
I like it. I like it. And yeah, in your case study, the fact that there was a 2-month test and you didn't even really advertise or market around it, that's pretty impressive that people just kind of naturally came across
Fully
it and
organic.
chose it. Yeah, that's terrific. Any other final thoughts from anybody?
I think that it's timely that we're having this podcast now. It's Parkinson's Awareness Month, and it's just a wonderful time. There's a lot of opportunities going on at the foundation around, creating awareness and fundraising and research. So thanks for having us in April. I think it's perfect.
That's the perfect way to leave the podcast. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story, and look forward to seeing you all out there in the wild soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening. Listen to more episodes at nonprofitpro.com as well as on Apple, Google, and Spotify.